Change. Goblet of the Truth Index by Dr. Pleune. Part 1.
Goblet of the Truth Index by Dr. Pleune, drpleune@gmail.com.
Change through creational energy, chapter 28, lines 60-77.
The use of the creational energy and power in you, through which you can use your consciousness and create ideas, thoughts and thereout feelings, happens in uncomplicatedness and simplicity. And for this, no religious, ideological, or philosophical learning is required. So neither does it require a belief in a godhead, a tin god, or an idolized human being, nor in any esoteric and other occult nonsense. And truly, to use the creational energy and power in you, you do not have to be able to read and write, but you only need your clear intellect and rationality to recognize the truth, and, out of it, to use the creation-given energy and power through which you are capable of having thoughts and feelings. And truly, the creational energy and the power included therein is given to each of you human beings of Earth in equal measure, and indeed without exception. Thus no difference exists therein, because a difference is only given with regard to the level of the consciousness evolution as well as concerning the degree of intellect and the rationality out of which also the fulfillment of the responsibility results. The fulfillment of the responsibility is also connected with the perceiving of the reality of the creational laws and recommendations and their mode of functioning, wherein the perceiving of all things is also anchored, which does not happen through the consciousness directly, but rather through the unconscious which comes before the consciousness, and which is not identical with the subconsciousness. Therefore, each perception occurs through the unconscious form which comes before the consciousness, through which immediately unconscious thoughts and thereout conscious feelings are triggered, after which, with a delay of 25 to 30 of a second, the consciousness and conscious thoughts themselves are included in the perception. Just as you can also perceive the things of the reality, you are, if you are heedful and attentive enough, able to perceive the creational energy and its power in you through which you can, via your consciousness as well as your thoughts and feelings, achieve tremendous effects and direct the energy and power, and indeed in the good or evil, depending on how you willingly form and use everything in responsibility or irresponsibility. If you use the creational energy and power that has been given to you for the good and best in full responsibility, then you can be joyous over it and have a good self-feeling, whereas if you squander it uselessly or use it for the evil, then tremble. Because through the interaction that is pre-given in the creational laws, you cannot escape the disadvantage which you create for yourselves through the ungood. The power of the interaction always strikes you, both in the good when you use it rightfully, and in the evil when you misuse it, and truly, you cannot hide from this. Therefore, the good is just as brought forth in you through the pure, neutral, positive, equalized creational energy and power as is the evil, and indeed depending on how you form them and bring them into effect according to your own choosing and will. You are free in the use of the creational energy and its power, so you can form and bring it into effect according to your own choosing and will, but this also includes the responsibility which you have to bear and from which you can never escape. Consequently, you shall use everything in the good and positive, so that you can bear the full responsibility for your ideas, thoughts, feelings, and deeds, as well as for all your activity in every respect. Also, you are recommended to nourish and cherish your thought world and your thereout resulting feelings in love, and let peace, freedom, and harmony prevail in you in order to also carry forth everything to your next ones, your fellow human beings, and your whole humankind. Also, you amongst you human beings of Earth who live far from the effect of truth and who are truth unknowers, unfair ones, conscienceless ones, unrighteous ones, and irresponsible ones, and who ignore the creational laws and recommendations, you can rejoice, because the same creational energy and power is given to you as is given to the fair ones, the righteous ones, the responsible ones, and the conscientious ones who are strong in their truth knowledge and who, contrary to you, follow the creation-given laws and recommendations. You only need to use the creational energy and power in you. Refrain from making everything heavy for yourselves and not forget that everything creational streams through you too, and that you are capable of giving everything a distinct direction according to your own volition and will. Thus, in the good and in the evil, in joy and sorrow, in love and hatred, as well as devastating or upbuilding. But consider, there is only this one creation energy and power, which you can not only use and bring into activity, but also strengthen and widen through your consciousness as well as through your thoughts and feelings. Apart from it, there is nothing comparable. So therefore also no God power which could cause anything in you, because each Godhead is a fabulated imagination in insubstantiality, and hence not capable of any energy or power. And the creation energy with its power alone bears in itself the secret that sooner or later the precious and valuable always prevails, that the darkness must give way to the light, the evil to the good, the hatred to the love, the unknowledge to the knowledge, the unwisdom to the wisdom and the disharmony, the unpeace and the unfreedom to the harmony, the peace and the freedom. But to ensure that all the high values of the love, the freedom and harmony, of the peace, knowledge and wisdom will not be long in coming, you human beings of earth, you shall make a conscious effort and use the pure, neutral, positive, equalized creation energy and power in your consciousness to the noble, good, and valuable, and build up the truth, its knowledge, and its wisdom in yourselves. Let the primal creation energy and its power be pure and unfolded in you. Make it stronger and develop your consciousness evolution out of it, as it is pre-given through the sense of the life. And do not let your creation-given consciousness energy and its power fall into a weakening through wrong ideas, thoughts and feelings of a dullness and something impure, because you must use and direct the creational energy and power in such a wise that it is always striking and decisive. Truly, if you only have a little heedfulness and attentiveness for your thoughts and feelings, then you will recognize and perceive for yourselves what is the good and what is the evil, and indeed without having to speak it out or ruminate over it. Recognizing the good and the evil in yourselves in heedfulness and attentiveness is the right way of the cognition, not however a dull rumination, because this brings no cognitions but only confusion and waste of energy and power. Rumination works like stringy morass, like a swamp which pulls everything into itself and paralyzes and suffocates everything. Be vigilant in your endeavors and connected to the gladness so that you gain real cognitions. If, however, you give yourselves over to the rumination, then you will get confused in all sorts of things which you will never be able to fathom, and this will make you depressed and sad. You cannot change things that happened in the past, nor can you make them good again. You can at the most give satisfaction for them, such as by offering apologies, or by making amends in whatever form, because once something has happened, it is no longer subject to any change. You can leave all things of the past behind you and take the way to the height of the truth and the reality, and to the bearing of the responsibility at every moment, if you do not shrink back in cowardice from the truth and reality.
Change how it happens. See also counseling, guidance, psychologist, psychiatrist, chapter 23, lines 168 to 176.
However, always be conscious that you are left up to yourselves in all these things and endeavors of the inner developmental change. Because if you are serious about your inner developmental change, as well as all the things that are connected with it, then truly, in this process of the serious inner developmental change, the status is given that you are actually alone with yourselves as human beings. In the process of your inner developmental change, you cannot expect help from any god, or tin god, or from any human being, or from anything else. Because apart from yourselves, there is nothing that could carry out your inner change. If, however, you consciously carry out your inner developmental change through your energy and power, then you will no longer expect help from outside, from anyone, from any god, victim god, angel, saint or demon, or from the deceased. Because in the conscious developmental change that you bring about in yourselves, you are already free in yourselves and are able to see what your developmental change brings you in terms of that which is good, better and positive. And consider, when you are free in yourselves, that there is also great energy and power in you. Besides the fact that nothing else can be done wrong with regard to the developmental change of the inner nature. And once there is freedom in you, then this has nothing to do with a defense, but rather with you being able to act rightly and freely henceforth according to your own discretion, precisely because you are free in yourselves and act out of the center of your changed inner nature. And therefore you no longer have any anxiety and fear, but are henceforth capable of creating true love in yourselves, and also living it out in yourselves to your fellow human beings. Because when you have true love in you, then you can do in the right and the good what you want. And if you have created true love in yourselves, then out of this the process arises that you get to know yourselves, and that you go in self-cognition in yourselves, which however in turn only happens through yourselves, but not through psychologists or psychiatrists, and not either through any other analysts, through philosophers, or those who arrogantly assume that they can be of assistance to you in the self-cognition, although they are not capable of this. Therefore you truthfully do not learn anything through them, and you cannot learn anything about yourself, but basically only about the one who wants to be helpful to you in the self-cognition. Truly, what your fellow human beings such as psychologists and philosophers, etc. can teach you is not what you are in yourselves, in your inner nature, that is to say in your individuality. Rather, they can only teach you your characteristics, your peculiarities that proceed out of your inner nature, but not however the individuality, the specialness and uniqueness which go very far beyond the characteristics and are connected to the innermost part of the inner nature, which is of pure spiritual nature and belongs to the realm of the spirit form, in which the true love and the life are guided from out of the creational laws and recommendations. Therefore, self-cognition is not the same as self-cognition, and individuality is not the same as individuality, because truthfully both things must be separated in themselves. Indeed, on the one side in the material realm which is outwardly expressed in you human beings, and that realm which only acts in the inner. So therefore it is necessary to speak of a material and outwardly directed self-cognition and individuality, and on the other side of an inner one which really only acts through the power of the spirit form in the inner of the nature, and must be laboriously fathomed out in order to let it have an effect in the exterior. Material self-cognition and individuality, fragment by fragment, gradually over the course of the life, as a result of which your being human in the real and true sense evolves over time. It is only through inner self-cognition, which must be fathomed in the core of your inner nature, that you experience and learn what you actually are in the inner of your own self, which is connected with the spirit realm, whereas that which is around the core corresponds to that part of the inner nature which is lived as individuality towards the outside and reflects the material character and the personality, out of which the behavior and the actions and effort are also determined. In the entire process, you must also look at and consider and bring forth a revolution of the consciousness, its thoughts as well as their feelings and the thereout resulting psyche structure, which may no longer be dependent on an external authority. However, this process involves great difficulties because what is important in the revolutionizing of the consciousness, thoughts, feelings and the psyche, that is to say, the entire mental block is repudiating your own inner and demolished authority, in which are anchored all your unimportant perceptions, cognitions, cognizances, your pseudo-knowledge, your practical experiences, and the living of those experiences, as well as all your views, ideas, and ideals. Truly, during your lifetime, you had things, happenings, and experiences that have taught you something, but you have raised up all that which you have learned to a new authority in you by which you are ruled, and which has just as great a destructive effect in you as an authority which is already thousands of years old.
Change actions that must be taken. Chapter 27, lines 53 to 65.
However, help would be granted to you through the truth, without you accepting it and leading your life according to it. Then after your beseeching and whining, you would immediately fall back to your old mode of life and into your old errors, and continue to deny the truth, thereby poisoning yourselves. Truly, it is only if you search for the effective truth, find it, accept it, and lead your life according to its laws and recommendations, that you will find the energy and power to finally bestir yourselves and to integrate yourselves into a constant improvement. To do this, however, you must turn fully and completely to the truth of all truth, which is solely to be found a certainty in recognition of the reality, and which you must search for, find, recognize, and fathom in yourselves, as well as in the creational laws and recommendations. In order to find the real truth, you human beings of Earth must cast aside your submissiveness to your imaginary godheads and tin gods, as well as to those human beings whom you raise up as idols. Therefore, you must also cast off your obdurateness towards the real truth, and uprightly strive to consider the word of the truth of the true prophets, and to use their teaching of the truth, teaching of the Spirit, teaching of the life, in order to developmentally change yourselves and to exclusively form your existence according to the creational laws and recommendations. An understanding of the teaching of the prophets, which is entirely given in the book entitled Goblet of the Truth, will, however, only be possible for you if you throw away from yourselves and destroy all the unmeasurable rubbish in your human consciousness which you have collected in your boastfulness towards the effective creational truth, as well as in your imagined understanding and your rationality, which has swollen into ridiculousness. And if you really want to turn to the real truth, to learn and follow it, then you must start from the very beginning and be like the children, without conceit, megalomania, and imperiousness, but instead free and open, in order to learn everything in a neutral wise and to process it in you, in order to become knowing and wise out of it in truth-bearingness. Consider, if you are searching for the truth, then you must behave neutrally, because it is impossible to carry with you all the errors and erroneous assumptions, as well as the belief forms regarding godheads, tin gods, and idolized human beings, since you must begin completely anew from the ground up and drop, and forget all submissiveness and belief-driven simple-mindedness, because it is only in this wise that you grow upwards to the truth and become stronger in it. If the truth were to help you simply because you need its help, but you did not want to strive for it, then you would ask for its help simply when in danger and affliction, after which you would, however, forget it very quickly once your anxiety and your dread have disappeared again. If you did not have to strive arduously yourselves for the truth and help, then, after the help had been provided, you would, as scrupulously as before, use your unintellect and your irrationality in a criticizing wise against the truth, instead of considering it. Such doing is an absolute waste of time for your short life period, through which you also endanger your future, because you do not awaken the creational in you through the effective truth, but quite the contrary. You only create hatred and war as well as unfairness, jealousy and murder and manslaughter in yourselves and in the entire world, and get very badly out of the control of the good human nature into torture, terror, crimes, pathological craving for revenge, and pathological craving for retaliation, through which unaccountability, unfairness, rightlessness, consciencelessness, and irresponsibility constantly gain the upper hand in you, as well as your pathological craving for uncontrolled offspring, which gets very badly out of the control of the good human nature into ever wilder overpopulation, thereby destroying the climate of the planet, and through which enormous quantities of life of all kinds are killed and also eradicated. Truly, you human beings of Earth, it now lies alone with you to decide whether you will continue to hurry towards misery, affliction, all conceivable terrible things, and possibly your own downfall and the destruction of your world, or whether you will bethink yourselves and turn to the truth and to the creational laws and recommendations in order to follow them and to save yourselves as well as your world and its nature. Consider, you alone are responsible for the overpopulation and for all affliction and all misery, as well as for the destruction of the climate and the entire terribleness of any kind and form that runs through the entire world and humankind. All this is merely because you do not strive for the effective truth. You do not look for it, and therefore you do not find it, and you cannot live according to it, or according to the true laws and recommendations of the creation. Because in your thoughts you hang on to irrational belief forms and false rules, laws and recommendations of your false and invented godheads and tin gods, and you follow their demands that are fabulated through you human beings for punishment and war against those whom you regard as your enemies. You only have the choice to liberate yourselves out of your self-created entanglements and to follow the truth of the creation as well as its laws and recommendations, or to go under. The choice for all things of your existence is left to you. However, consider that, whatever you decide, the consequences of your decision will determine your actions. Indeed, in the right and in the good as well as in the wrong and in the bad, because the causes that you create will give rise to the corresponding effects. Only if you create the right causes will the effects also be right and valuable, out of which true love and harmony as well as peace and freedom will develop for you individuals and for your entire humankind, through which all evil, each war and terror as well as all other terrible things will be nipped in the bud. The right causes for the right effects are things which you can however only create. If you go in conformity with the truth of all truth, which you must experience and live in yourselves a certainty in recognition of the reality.
Change allow the teaching of the truth to penetrate you to cleanse your inner world and give understanding a growth. Chapter 3 lines 55.
And be certain, or knowing, that if you allow the true words of the teaching of the prophets to penetrate into you, and if you yourselves think about it and search for the truth in yourselves, then you will also find the proof of the truth in yourselves. And if you do the same, then you will cleanse yourselves in your inner world or consciousness, and in the understanding of the truth, so that you will surely elevate yourselves to be the ones knowing of the truth and fair ones or responsible ones.
Change becoming connected to the truth gives cognition and rationality. Chapter 5 lines 22.
The real truth of the laws and recommendations of the primal wellspring of all existence or creation, promises to all those who are connected to the truth, and who do good deeds that they will find forgiveness in themselves for things of falsehood, that they do unknowingly and only understand it after they have already committed the misdeed. Their cognition and the atonement or changing to the better of the incorrect action will be the great reward that they create and receive in themselves. Truly, misdeed or error alone is the way that leads to cognition and unfolding or evolution, because it is only through committing misdeeds or errors that people of your kind or you human beings learn to differentiate or understand things so that you become knowing or conscious. Change yourselves and become connected to the truth, equitableness or fairness, and righteousness or conscientiousness, as well as evaluation or cognition, and true discernment or rationality.
Change brings freedom to act with discretion and true love. Chapter 23, lines 171.
And consider, when you are free in yourselves, that there is also great energy and power in you, besides the fact that nothing else can be done wrong with regard to the developmental change of the inner nature. And once there is freedom in you, then this has nothing to do with a defense, but rather with you being able to act rightly and freely henceforth according to your own discretion, precisely because you are free in yourselves and act out of the center of your changed inner nature. And therefore you no longer have any anxiety and fear, but are henceforth capable of creating true love in yourselves and also living it out in yourselves to your fellow human beings. Because when you have true love in you, then you can do in the right and the good what you want.
Change by looking inward first, then outward to the teaching of the truth for its application. Chapter 5, lines 76 to 77.
And truly, on your way of cognition and of unfolding or evolution, you are walking alone in yourselves, because it is in yourselves that you have to do the work of learning, the work of investigation or research, recognition and unfolding or evolution. From outside of yourselves you only have sight and hearing, and taste and touch, as well as the words and the teaching of the true prophets, from which you can take or accomplish everything that you have to investigate or research and to recognize or see in yourselves, so that you may become knowing or conscious, and wise and therefore righteous or conscientious, and fair or responsible, and fulfill the laws and recommendations of the primal wellspring of all modesty or creation. And if you follow the teaching of the truth, the teaching of the Spirit, the teaching of the life, and therefore the truth of the laws and recommendations of the wellspring of all equitableness or fairness or creation, then you can be assured that you will find in it true friendship, as can never be amongst people of your kind or fellow human beings, even when you gather in a great crowd to defeat the untruth and become friends in inseparability or connectedness.
Change comes through learning the creational laws and recommendations with motivation and interest. Chapter 22, lines 60.
If you work yourselves into the truthly truth in the form of the creational laws and recommendations with motivation and with interest, then you will rather soon experience a considerable developmental change in the thought and feeling world, which will also be realized in the life itself. If the essence of the learning is implemented practically in everyday life, through which a greater help in the mastering of all problems arises in a perceptible wise.
Change by using everything in the creation with its laws and recommendations. Chapter 25, lines 283.
And if you use everything rightfully that the creation with its laws and recommendations has given you, then you will thankfully and enjoy change everything in such a wise to the good and best, that you can pass it on to your fellow human beings and to all those created creations, which are capable of a good and positive developmental change through you human beings.
Change cannot come unless you change your attitude and false teachings. Chapter 4, lines 127.
Truly, those amongst you who remain far from the truth, you will be carried off by everything evil and by all disasters, so you miss the goodness and the values of the life, because you are not striving for the truth of the primal power or creation, and its laws and recommendations as you treat yourselves as weak ones of the life. And for you weak ones, the truth is so far away that you cannot make your way to it unless you change your attitude or mentality, and place all false teachings of fabulated or invented gods and tin gods behind your back so that you strive to reach the real truth in front of them. If, however, you do not follow the way of the truth of the primal power or creation and continue to persist in unknowledge of the truth, then you will continue to create the destiny in yourselves that your inner nature is a place where the shadow world or hell resides, the fire of which will consume you.
Change your life. Eradicate all in you that cannot be brought into agreement with the truth. Chapter 7 lines 156.
Choose yourselves as righteous ones or conscientious ones, and fair ones or responsible ones, and do not set any delay in doing so. Rather make the change in the moment or immediately, so that you no longer do unrighteous things or conscienceless things and unfair things or irresponsible things. Eradicate everything in you that cannot be brought into agreement with the truth of the laws and recommendations of the wellspring of the love or creation, and do it for the sake of being righteous ones or conscientious ones, fair ones or responsible ones and virtuous ones, so that you withstand each temptation and you no longer fall into calamity. Be your own protectors. Take pity on yourselves and forgive yourselves, because you are the best forgivers if you are sincerely remorseful, and you free yourselves from all unright and all unrighteousness or consciencelessness and inequity or unfairness.
Change yourselves to the real truth. Forbid what is unright. Chapter 9 lines 112.
And only if you fulfill the promise of the regulation or duty, and create truthfully love in yourselves, when you turn away from the lovelessness towards yourselves and towards people of your kind or fellow human beings, in remorse, and when you no longer pray to gods and tin gods, and you no longer bow down and cast yourselves down before them and before the servants of gods and servants of tin gods, but when you change yourselves to the real truth and demand or direct right in yourselves and forbid what is unright, so that you heed the dividing lines or boundaries that are given through the laws and recommendations of the primal power or creation, and if you heed the joyful message of the truth teaching through the true prophets, only then are you on the way to the equitableness or fairness and righteousness or conscientiousness, in order to become fair ones or responsible ones.
Clean your thoughts and feelings, and become stable and strong. Chapter 25 lines 274 to 287.
You must therefore clean yourselves and become stable and strong in a good and positive wise in your thoughts and feelings, because only therethrough will the many crimes and unrighteousnesses as well as Aussertungen of all kinds happen less and decrease more and more, of which many amongst you are heavily co-guilty without you knowing it, because you do not care about it and also do not know the truth. Consider, the swinging waves of your thoughts and feelings always impinge there, where they come upon equalities, therefore upon thoughts and feelings of the same or similar kind, in which case distance is of no significance, since the swinging waves are so fast that they hurry around the world in a fraction of a second and strike your fellow human beings at the farthest parts of Earth and bring about new effects in them. So it is given that negative or positive thoughts and feelings from you individuals, you humankind of Earth, can bring about good or evil in all the world by striking individual people of your kind, small or large groups or even whole peoples who are aligned to your thoughts and feelings. Thus they can then forcibly trigger deeds and actions that are completely different in their forms to your mental and feeling-based impulsations, and yet nonetheless find their origin therein. Since your thoughts and feelings swing out into the world and somewhere strike any of your fellow human beings, so you carry co-responsibility for their actions, and indeed both in the negative and in the positive. It can also be that when carrying out deeds and actions, abominable things happen which you yourselves had never thought of. The origin of their coming about, however, still leads back to your own thoughts and feelings. Truthfully, you are in constant connection with all your fellow human beings and their deeds and actions, whereas you yourselves are also struck by the returning effects of the thoughts, feelings, deeds, and actions which burden your consciousness and through which a building up of going in a circle results. Due to the fact that amongst you, you humankind of Earth, A building up of going in a circle of your thoughts and feelings as well as your deeds and actions exists as a permanent connection. You must not only developmentally change towards the truth of all truth and follow the creational laws and recommendations as individuals, but as a whole humankind. As individuals, you can only be efficacious on a small scale and encourage people of your kind to the rationality so that they turn to the effective creational truth and to the following of the laws and recommendations. But in order to really let true love grow in the whole humankind, as well as peace, freedom and harmony, righteousness, fairness and responsibility as well as conscientiousness and a clear following of the creational laws and recommendations, it is necessary that every single one amongst you humankind of Earth, gives ample consideration to the real truth and to all the high creational values and to the following of the laws and recommendations. And truly, you humankind of Earth, can also contribute strongly as individuals to the love, peace, freedom and harmony and to the happiness of all humankind, even if you can be efficacious only on a small scale, because you can be glad and have pure and joyful thoughts for good deeds that others do, and that unfold both near and far through their own as well as your good, healthy and positive thoughts and feelings, whose swinging waves they receive from you, and which they evaluate to the good and positive. And from this, of which you shall be certain, streams everything equally and prosperously back to you again, even if you do not know it, and if you do not consciously perceive it. So you humankind of Earth, are entirely connected with each other, and as a developmental change to the good, to true love, freedom and harmony as well as to the peace amongst all of you shall be called forth and emerge. It is necessary that you altogether connect yourselves together in these high values through your thoughts and feelings. Build them up in yourselves and jointly nourish and cherish them, since only through that can everything become truth and reality. So listen to those individuals amongst you who strive for it and do rightfully, and heed the teaching of the prophets, the teaching of the truth, the teaching of the Spirit and the teaching of the life, which is given through the goblet of the truth, so that you finally comprehend and follow the creational laws and recommendations and lead a life in delight and truth. You must finally perceive and acknowledge the unmovable strength of character and of all virtues of the creation and its laws and recommendations, because solely in their effects is everything given that leads to the truthly knowledge and the real truth, which gives you also wisdom and lets you become true human beings. So you become worthy of consciously receiving the great goodness, which the creation gives you through your life, and therewith also gives everything which is intended for your human consciousness. Or in the strength of character and of all virtues, everything is included. All high values such as love, peace, freedom, harmony, positive negative equalizedness, and all virtues. 283. And if you use everything rightfully that the creation with its laws and recommendations has given you, then you will thankfully and enjoy change everything in such a wise to the good and best, that you can pass it on to your fellow human beings and to all those created creations, which are capable of a good and positive developmental change through you human beings. And if you use everything rightfully that the creation with its laws and recommendations has given you, then you will thankfully and enjoy change everything in such a wise to the good and best, that you can pass it on to your fellow human beings and to all those created creations, which are capable of a good and positive developmental change through you human beings. Do not remain cut off from all that which the creation has given you for your life in the good and positive, also the energy and power of your consciousness, so that you use this in the sense of the evolution and do not suffer a decline in it. Do not let yourself sink deeper than you have already sunk, but strive for the real truth of all truth, and fall away from your God belief, and from your belief in tin gods and idolized human beings, so that you go towards better times and a high-swinging humanhood. Heed the truth as it is given to you in yourselves and in the creational laws and recommendations, and as it is also taught to you through the teaching of the prophets, so that you find the vitality of the real truth and also experience it in yourselves. Finding the truth is hard for you human beings of Earth, but it becomes continuously easier for you the more you get into it and win cognitions, knowledge as well as wisdom and thereout fulfillments, which make miracle over miracle of the creational goodness and beauty just as recognizable in you as they also make great miracles visible and accessible in the outer. Be careful on the way to the truth. Because if you go unattentively and do not heed and overcome all hindrances and dangers that result out of the unrightness of your thoughts and feelings, then the might of that starts to unfold, which constrains you into very distinct forms of specific purposes that are based on your own wishes, which fulfill themselves and shall thereby leave aside the truth. And truly this might and danger can devour you. So you go down in it, if you tread the way of the truth unattentively. Because consider, your old goods of thoughts and your old feelings try again and again to break through to hinder the learning and fathoming as well as the following of the truth. Because the time immemorial belief factors are of immense strength and do not want to be pushed away or dissolved.
Change comes through the truth. Find it, accept it and live it. Chapter 27 lines 54.
Truly, it is only if you search for the effective truth, find it, accept it, and lead your life according to its laws and recommendations, that you will find the energy and power to finally bestir yourselves and to integrate yourselves into a constant improvement. To do this, however, you must turn fully and completely to the truth of all truth, which is solely to be found as certainty in recognition of the reality in which you must search for. Find, recognize, and fathom in yourselves, as well as in the creational laws and recommendations.
Change easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a person to suffer within and accept the truth. Chapter 7 lines 41.
Truly, you unfair ones or irresponsible ones and unrighteous ones or conscienceless ones, you condemn all signs or evidence of certain or actual truth and turn away from it with disdain. Although in doing so you do not realize how you are increasingly closing off your inner world or consciousness to the true existence or reality, and are withering in your world of thoughts and feelings as well as in your psyche. Truthfully, you cannot open your firmament of your inner world or consciousness and cannot go into its firmament or consciousness levels in order to fathom them and to gain unfolding or evolutive advantage or success from them. And truly a camel would be more likely to pass through the eye of a needle than for you to turn to the truth without you first suffering great and painful harm and a serious calamity, because you are truthfully great malefactors and only learn through harm and calamity.
Change, fear of changing, is due to being captured and dependent on religion. Chapter 23 lines 140 to 141.
Many amongst you do not wish to change themselves in their inner nature, and the change of the inner nature is particularly unattractive to those amongst you who are well provided for and secure to a certain extent in economic and social respects, and therefore who only have minor problems, if indeed any at all. But there are also those amongst you who are captured by and dependent on your religion, and who hold fast to your religious, ideological or philosophical imaginations, or who are ready simply to accept all things of the existence in your own self, and to live with them just as they happen to be, or happen to impinge upon you in any quite distinct or altered kind and wise whatsoever. However, all this is wrong, and it is a life attitude that does not correspond with the truth and reality, and indeed not with the guidelines of the creational laws and recommendations either, which are not difficult to recognize and to fulfill. Indeed, even if they do appear to be too heavy and too power-destroying for you to recognize and to fulfill, because you are too weak towards yourselves and, what is more, too cowardly to separate yourselves from the force of your individuality, which gives you so much apparent joy and apparent well-being if you live according to your Osatungen, your vices and pathological cravings, your hatred, your unfreedom, disharmony, and the unpeace, as well as your pathological craving for revenge and all other terrible things.
Change can only come about through your own motivation and will. Chapter 23 lines 137.
Consider, if you know how you have to look at the things of the life and perceive them, then everything will become entirely clear and precise for you. and you will recognize that all that is required in order to look at and to perceive is merely your own motivation and merely your own will as well as your own initiative. However, no ideology, no religion and no philosophy, as well as no teacher, priest, no gods and tin gods, and of course no human idols and neither false nor true prophets, because only you alone through yourselves can determine over yourselves and over what you want to do or not do.
Change each method system for change is purely an individual approach because each person's inner nature is different. Chapter 23 lines 144 to 153.
And those of you who search for help in order to be shown a way in the form of a method or a system for the developmental change of your own inner nature, those are not really seriously working on an effective developmental change, because everything is merely directed towards having others do everything in order to bring about the apparently desired developmental change, whereas there is no fundamental interest in a developmental change of the inner nature, but only an interest in having others use a method or a system which is intended to lead to the apparently wished for developmental change of your own individuality with only minor help from yourselves. But truly, each way, each method, or each system for the developmental change of the inner nature is purely individual, that is to say personal, and cannot be transferred to another by you. Therefore it would be exceedingly foolish to name a way, a method or a system. If this, however, were to be done, then you would only be following an imitation, that is to say a pattern, and thereby taking over the purely individual way, that is to say the method or the system of another, and copying the entire thing into yourselves, through which you would unavoidably get yourselves into difficulties and hardships that are based in the thoughts, feelings, consciousness and psyche, namely through an adapting to an external individuality and through an approval of the same, which without doubt brings forth confusion in your own mental block and leads to chaos in the psyche and consciousness. This means, if you do such a thing, that you set up the authority of one of your fellow human beings in yourselves, through which enormous conflicts are brought forth between yourselves and the external authority, as a result of which you believe that you are obliged to do this or that which is told and dictated to you, although you are incapable of actually doing it, because you cannot exchange your inner nature with that of one of your fellow human beings, but must be yourselves and free in yourselves in every wise. Therefore, two inner natures cannot be existent in you either. You human beings of Earth, you are individual natures who have your own thoughts and feelings, and well as your own, and therefore individual intentions and inclinations, hardships and needs as well as wishes which can in no kind and wise be integrated in an external method or an external system which you believe you must follow. In all respects, an external authority stands in opposition to your own person and dignity. Therefore, the recognition of an external authority in yourselves is a contradiction to your own inner freedom and cannot be tolerated under any circumstances. If you tolerate it nevertheless, then you are no longer yourselves, but rather you lead an existence of doubtfulness, and therefore a life between the external method, that is to say, the external system, that is to say, an external ideology, and the effective reality of your true life. If you allow to let yourselves in for an attempt in such a wise that brings your own inner nature into consonance with the external authority, that is to say, the external ideology, then you demolish your own self-consciousness and suppress your entirely own individuality. The actual truth of yourself is not anchored in the external authority, that is to say, ideology, but solely and alone in you yourselves, and indeed in that which you effectively are. Therefore, you shall consider that, if you fathom yourselves, you do not direct yourselves according to others, not according to an external authority, that is to say, not according to an external ideology, but only according to yourselves and according to what you truthfully are and in all honesty want to be and also strive to be. However, If you do not follow this guidance, then you will remain during the time of your life as human beings who live from the authority of others and are subserviently dependent on them in debasing submissiveness. If you wish to change yourselves, human beings of Earth, and if in doing so you demand that you shall be told how you shall do this, then it may very well appear upright that you really want to do it. But that does not correspond to the truth, because truthfully, you are being unhonest and do not want it. Since you are calling for an external authority, which is supposed to help you to achieve a new inner regulation of your inner nature, therefore you are hoping to attain a new individuality through it and through its method, that is to say its system. But this is truly not possible, because only you yourselves can change yourselves fundamentally through your own motivation, initiative, and power. Therefore, you must also go your own way.
Change for the future is determined at the present, but integrated for continuous progress. Chapter 20 lines 1 to 6.
Confidence lies in people of your kind or human beings themselves, also for all the time that still lies before your unused life or life still to come. All the days of your time to come or future still lie before you, and therefore these are still free for you and unburdened, and not characterized by impressions, so that they are still as untouched as the purity of innocence itself. You are still free from the efforts and loads of the coming days, and you still have not failed in anything, because everything still lies before you and is open, such as the hours of the love, joy and happiness, as well as those of the joylessness, worries and sorrow, because you're still living in the moment or today. Because truly, nothing has yet been of the time to come or future, in which you will first have to live into. But what shall happen to you in the coming days and in the new time or future is something that you already determine at the present time or now. Therefore, you can change much that was previously not good or bad, negative in your existence or life. Because truly, nothing is obliged to be repeated if it already was once. And you shall not doubt this. Truly, you think that you bring yourselves into the coming days and into the new time or future? But truly, this is only partially correct, because you do indeed live into the new days and into the time to come or future, but only together with the activity of the laws and recommendations of the life-giving or creation in which you are embedded. And as everything in the extent of your world or all around you changes, so you also change, because everything is integrated into developmental change or renewal change, so that there may be continuous advancement or progress.
Change for yourself and world is through the high virtues of true love, peace, freedom, and harmony. Chapter 23 lines 13.
And if you therefore ask what you can do for your life, and against all the evil world happenings through which you are disappointed, then the answer is found in that you must strive as individuals in every wise to achieve in yourselves true love, as well as peace, freedom and harmony, in order to carry these high values forth amongst your fellow human beings and throughout the whole world.
Change in your life to victory. Chapter 25 lines 203 to 211.
Even thought creations are works that catch up to you again, namely depending on how they are formed in the negative or positive. So they build light or dark swinging waves in you, which you must get through in order to get into your consciousness world. No help, and also no protection can be offered to you from outside in this, since you live in self-determination, and therefore only you alone can help yourselves. So the first step and every step thereafter must come from you yourselves, and you yourselves determine whether the first step and every step thereafter will be easy or heavy, because this lies in your thought and feeling world, through which you determine the volition in the negative or positive. So the heaven or the hell lies in you yourselves, depending on how you decide in the good or evil. You yourselves can decide all things over whatever you want to assess, but for this, no God, No tin god as well as no idolized human being is responsible except you yourselves. So you alone must bear the consequences of your thoughts and feelings, as well as of your volition without imposing any requirements thereto. You humankind of earth, you alone create everything through your own thoughts, the feelings and the thereout resulting deeds, which is why you alone must also bear the consequences thereout. Do not therefore foment unpeace, unfreedom and disharmony, and do not create hatred and war, but keep your thoughts and feelings pure in true love, so that you spread peace, freedom and harmony, and give righteousness, fairness, and conscientiousness enough consideration. Be at all times watchful in your thoughts, feelings, and in your deeds, and do not forget that every thought created and sent out by you, and also every feeling, whether negative or positive, attracts everything on its way out, which is of the same kind, and they furthermore adhere to the consciousness of many of your fellow human beings if they get into them. If the latter are, perhaps only for a second, unattentive, forget themselves, and have no control over themselves, the consequence of which is that the thoughts and feelings become ever stronger. And if such hovering around thoughts and feelings are given the opportunity through unattentiveness, etc., to get into the consciousness, then the corresponding goods of thoughts spread around, and thus also the thereout resulting feelings, evermore amongst people of your kind, were in accordance with your unequalized and unneutral goods of thoughts. The ungood, the evil, and the negative prevail. And consider what responsibility you bear with your thoughts and feelings, both with regard to yourselves and with regard to your fellow human beings, because your goods of thoughts and goods of feelings bring forth effects, not merely in yourselves, but also externally amongst your fellow human beings, which manifest themselves in acts and deeds, and indeed, as a rule, in a negative, bad, ungood and evil form, because your thoughts and feelings are to a large extent of such a constitution. And if your thoughts and feelings take effect on any of your fellow human beings, and if they put your negative, evil, bad and ungood goods of thoughts and goods of feelings into action, then you bear the responsibility for this. And truly, you humankind of earth have to consider that in you as a whole, as well as an individual human being, your responsibility is triggered simply by your nourishing the ungood, negative, evil, and bad thoughts and feelings, because namely each thought and each feeling sent out by you retains a permanent connection with you, without your being aware and conscious of it. The thoughts and feelings that you send out charge themselves on their way out with new energy and power and return, thus strengthened to you like a boomerang, wherethrough you will be burdened or delighted anew with them, depending on whether your sent out thoughts and feelings are of a evil, ungood and bad, or of a positive, good, excellent and kind nature. You form your own thought and feeling world and send this out, wherewith you also create the possibility that they can get into the consciousness of those of your fellow human beings who are unattentive or who nourish similar thought and feeling forms. Thus, you can also be befallen by the thoughts and feelings of your fellow human beings, just as they can be through your own goods of thoughts and goods of feelings. Therefore, also in this relation, an interaction comes about once again, as in everything that is existent. Thus, the teaching out of the creational laws and recommendations is that you shall not squander the energy and power of your thoughts and feelings, but use them rightfully by guiding, nourishing, and cherishing them in a good, positive, right, excellent, kind, and wise, and that you defend yourselves consciously against intruding strange thoughts and feelings by making your own thoughts and feelings to a sharp defense. Create in this wise out of your own thoughts and feelings a protection against everything which is of the ungood, the evil, the negative, the bad, and the oscartet that breaks in upon you from outside, so that you do not take it on, but rather remain free of it. And you in yourselves always fight only for the good and heal wounds in the whole realm of everything creation given. If you want to act in accordance with the truth and move forwards in terms of the evolution of your consciousness, then you must arrange your thoughts and feelings to this in a controlling wise, which means, however, that you must lay down many false views and shake many rigid pillars that carry the false and erroneous teachings that have made you since time immemorial to believers in godheads and gods and in idolized human beings, as well as in religions, ideologies, and philosophies.
Change in yourself through your own motivation, initiative and power. Chapter 23, lines 153.
If you wish to change yourselves, human beings of earth, and if in doing so you demand that you shall be told how you shall do this, then it may very well appear upright that you really want to do it, but that does not correspond to the truth, because truthfully you are being unhonest and do not want it, since you are calling for an external authority which is supposed to help you to achieve a new inner regulation of your inner nature. Therefore, you are hoping to attain a new individuality through it, and through its method, that is to say, its system. But this is truly not possible because only you yourselves can change yourselves fundamentally through your own motivation, initiative, and power. Therefore, you must also go your own way.
Change inner change by what you acquire and what you do. Chapter 7, lines 97.
If you are righteous or conscientious, and you strive for the truth of the laws and recommendations of the wellspring of the love or creation, then fruitfulnesses or well-being will be opened to you by your firmament or consciousness, and your earth or psyche, which will exceed all your wishes. But if you are unrighteous or conscienceless, and you do not strive, then you will persist in the state or condition of inner misery and inner hardship, because you realize or create in yourselves what you acquire through what you do and how you guide your thoughts and feelings.
Change in truth and reality brings a true paradise, well-being, love, peace, freedom and harmony. Chapter 23, lines 99.
And only if you change yourselves in truth and reality to the good and better, and thereby your consciousness awakes to a new freshness, reforms itself and becomes pure, will it be possible for you to bring forth an entirely different and valueful world, in which you then live in a true paradise, and you feel well, and you are filled with love, and are also surrounded by it, as also peace, freedom, and harmony will prevail in and outside you.
Change is your responsibility. Chapter 28, lines 38 to 49.
Bearing the responsibility is always the first thing you have to do, but the by far largest number amongst you human beings of earth, you push off the bearing and exercising of the responsibility onto your imaginary godheads, tin gods, angels, saints, and to idolize human beings, as well as onto your next ones or other fellow human beings. Because on the one hand you see the responsibility as a burden with which you do not want to encumber yourselves, and, on the other hand, because the bearing of the responsibility is, out of cowardice, too much for you, or because you think that you are not responsible yourselves. But the pushing off of the responsibility, no matter in what kind and wise it is done, corresponds to a self-degradation, as well as to a cowardly submissiveness towards those who shall bear the responsibility. On the other hand, the pushing off of the responsibility is also a well-calculated consideration in the respect that without bearing and exercising one's own responsibility, the life can be lived all the more joyfully, merrily and scrupulously. So those of you amongst you human beings of earth who want to satisfy all your desires and wishes, you think that you can obtain everything without the bearing of your own responsibility, as well as that you can behave negatively towards your next ones and fellow human beings in an irresponsible wise. If need be, your human laws and ordinances can be circumvented and conflicts avoided. So many clever ones amongst you can, in the name of the laws and ordinances, successfully commit criminal deeds and other law breaches, etc., which do not stand up to moral examination, but nevertheless bear big names and titles, and enjoy the reputation of an especially able and successful human being. Thus many amongst you human beings of earth are unrighteous ones who, despite your poor discernment, are able to live comfortably in accordance with your own views and your irresponsibility, and in your consciencelessness no uneasy conscience pesters you, and also no unrest is shown that your doing is not right, and that you should do differently from what corresponds to your wishes and your behavior. The truth is that the reality of the life is inexorable. Therefore, your wishes in this respect cannot bring about any deviation from the reality, because the creational laws and recommendations remain brazenly existent, so that what you sow will as a rule be what you harvest. And this fact says more than you can conceive, because the whole corresponds exactly to the process of the interaction as it is given through the creational laws and recommendations. The interaction is so precise that out of a cause a distinct effect is determinable in advance, and the effect always contains more than the cause initially carried in itself, just as from a single sowed corn a multiple in the form of an ear arises. Therefore, you human beings of earth, you will be struck in manifold forms by this again, as effect of that which you create and send out as cause in your thoughts and feelings, and indeed according to the kind of your volition in a negative or positive wise. Be conscious that in a consciousness-based wise, and through your thoughts and feelings, as well as through your deeds and your activity, you bear the responsibility for everything. And this responsibility does not first begin when carrying out the action, but already when the idea comes up, and at the decision through the thoughts and feelings through which ultimately everything is transformed into the serious volition. Consider there is no splitting between the idea and its carrying out, if the idea is indeed realized, because everything belongs together and is a unity. Everything always goes together, never just side by side, because the immenseness of the effects of the creational laws and recommendations, which are invisible to you human beings of earth, intertwine like a perfect and never-failing machinery, even with regard to your ideas, thoughts, feelings, deeds, and your activity in every respect. And the laws and recommendations of the creation, of the universal consciousness, are universally equal. And so they also carry the whole in you, and weave through every fiber of your body and your nerve cords and hold everything together. And everything is in mutual interaction and therefore functions perfectly. Everything functions therefore according to the effects of the creational laws and recommendations which go through everything and without which no causes and no effects can occur. Hence, if false teachings speak of heaven and hell and of God and devil, then this is fundamentally wrong, just as it is also wrong to talk of good and evil powers, because all energies and powers are neutral in their kind, so also the negative and the positive, which only bring forth a distinct effect. When they are brought together, heaven and hell are not places but rather conditions in yourselves, which you create yourselves through ideas, thoughts and feelings in your psyche, as are likewise the good and the evil which you also willingly put into action out of your ideas, thoughts, feelings, and through your own decisions. Therefore also your energies and powers are neutral in you human beings of Earth. In consequence, you yourselves turn them into good or evil, and indeed through your ideas, thoughts and feelings, as well as through your decisions and your volition. Fundamentally, the negative and the positive are in themselves each a complete oneness, just as they result in a complete oneness when united in a right wise. But in a wrong union, they create terribleness. As for example, if you create evil out of your energies and powers through wrong ideas, thoughts, and feelings, as well as through a wrong volition.
Change learn through a process of understanding yourself of what and who you are. Chapter 23 lines 177 to 181.
Truly, if you want to understand yourselves, both in your innermost, spiritual individuality and in your outward, material individuality, then you require neither the authority that you have built up in yourselves during your lifetime, nor that which is thousands of years old, because you are something vital which is in continuous movement and knows no rest. Therefore you must not look at yourselves and attempt to fathom yourselves with the dead authority of your up-till-now life. Rather, you must look at yourselves with the newly created authority, because only through this is it possible for you really to understand everything that lies in the movement and the beauty of the whole. You human beings of Earth, you must be free from any external authority and create your own free and good authority in yourselves. Therefore, you must also be free from your own old and inadequate authority, which you have confusingly and erroneously built up in yourselves during your life. You have to make yourselves free and loosen yourselves from everything that was in your past with regard to your false individuality. Because only in this wise do you manage that your mental block, your consciousness, your thoughts and feelings, as well as your psyche, are full of energy and power at all times, are in youthfulness and nevertheless shining in wisdom, as well as innocent and full of interest. Truly, it is only in this status that you can be really attentive and heedful. And you can really perceive, observe, and recognize everything and learn thereout. Consider that you human beings of Earth primarily require a conscious and comprehensive consciousness so that you are capable of directly being aware of your inner and innermost life process and can direct it in such a wise that you do not need to correct it continuously, so that you make progress and the whole is what it shall be, but not what it shall not be. If you constantly have to correct your life process, then you are imposing the censor, which is nothing other than again a new authority, which once again dictates new things to you which you follow and through which you are again and again wrongly guided. If you really want to learn, then you must start a long journey in yourselves through your entire nature, through its shell and inner and through its core, and also through your entire mental block and consciousness block, in which case the consciousness, thoughts and feelings are of just as much importance as are the character and personality. And for this journey you must be unweighted, without opinions and prejudices, as well as unburdened through thoughts and feelings and all the rubbish which has built up in you since time immemorial and has burdened you. Forget everything that you yourselves have assumed and thought to know about yourselves, and attempt to recognize yourselves in the wise as if you had never seen yourselves before and never heard anything about yourselves previously, so that you approach yourselves in a totally neutral wise and fathom out what and who you truthfully are.
Change learning to love all people. Chapter 9 lines 111 to 112.
Those who build their house, their belief or assumptions on undermined sand, they are fighting against the truth of the laws and recommendations of the primal power or creation, and therefore they are not the same as the ones who are knowing of the truth, the fair ones or responsible ones and righteous ones or conscientious ones. Rather, they are unfair ones or irresponsible ones, and unrighteous ones or conscienceless ones who demand outrage or torture, punishment and death for people of their kind whenever fallibilities or errors are committed. So they also do not hesitate to wage battles or wars, and to accurse people of your kind or human beings if they have more goods and are richer, if they are of a different skin color, of a different attitude or mentality, and a different godliness or religion, belief. They do not follow the recommendation of the truth teaching that the promise of people of your kind or human beings is the regulation or duty of the love for the next one, and that all people shall also for themselves fulfill the promise of the love in themselves to the best extent. And only if you fulfill the promise of the regulation or duty, and create truthfully love in yourselves, when you turn away from the lovelessness towards yourselves and towards people of your kind or fellow human beings, in remorse, and when you no longer pray to gods and tin gods, and you no longer bow down and cast yourselves down before them, and before the servants of gods and servants of tin gods, but when you change yourselves to the real truth, and demand, or direct, right in yourselves, and forbid what is unright, so that you heed the dividing lines or boundaries that are given through the laws and recommendations of the primal power or creation, and if you heed the joyful message of the truth teaching through the true prophets, only then are you on the way to the equitableness or fairness, and righteousness or conscientiousness in order to become fair ones or responsible ones.
Change liberation from the enticement of false teachings liberates you from gods, or tin gods, and lies against the truth. Chapter 6 lines 28 to 31.
Truly, it is only when you start to liberate yourselves from the enticement of your false prophet and false teachings that you recognize that you were servants of gods and servants of tin gods and prayed to insubstantialities. And only then do you recognize that you once again not only are lying against the truth, but that you are lying to yourselves and are slandering or calumniating yourselves, which is why everything that you concoct unrightfully betrays or abandons you. Truly, amongst you, there are many who listen to the truth and yet have placed a veil over your true discernment or intellect, so that you cannot understand, and you have shut up your ears with deafness, so that you cannot hear the truth in its value. And even if you see the signs or evidence of the truth with your eyes, then you place a veil over it so that you cannot see truly, because you are fighting in yourselves against the truth and the untruth, with the effect that you cannot overcome the inner resistance and decide for the real truth and finally explain or teach everything merely as fables of the old ones. And those amongst you who hypocritically boast of having knowledge of the truth and yet do not act according to it, because you keep yourselves far from it, you dare to forbid people of your kind or fellow human beings to turn to the truth. Therefore, you are casting people of your kind or fellow human beings into ruin just as yourselves. It is just that you do not understand it. If you could only see how you are placing yourselves into the fire of inequity or unfairness, then you would wish that you could turn back to the truth. Although you are deprived of this because you treat the signs or evidence of the truth as lies, and are believers in godliness or religion, and its gods and tin gods.
Change. You are fully responsible for the entire status of your own inner nature. Chapter 23 lines 100 to 101.
However, this can only happen if every single one of you human beings of Earth as a single individuum becomes conscious of the important fact and acts according to it, namely that you are yourselves as fully all-around responsible as individuals for the entire status of your own inner nature. That is to say, your individuality as well as for the evolution of your consciousness and with regard to your actions and efforts. As each individual of you is also fully and completely responsible for the status of the world in its entirety, irrespective of where you may live and to which social class, religion, or sect, which people, which culture, which philosophy or ideology you belong to as individuals. Be clearly conscious, even if you vehemently deny it, and believe that you are not guilty, that every single one of you is responsible for each war and each act of terror and for each other act of Goblet. Indeed, even if you do not advocate it. And you are guilty of it because you do not do anything against it, and you do not oppose it in any reasonable and logical wise in Gewaltsamer Gewalt los Ichkeit. You are only innocent of the whole thing if you do whatever is possible for you to take measures against all the terrible things, the wars, the terror and the acts of Goblet, whether through spoken words, through speeches and lectures, or through the script. Because if you do this, then do it according to law and right within the frame of the creational laws and recommendations to which each war and other terror and all acts of Gewalt stand in contradiction.
Change, look forward in life by rightful living and leaving the past behind. Chapter 14 lines 21.
Go continuously forwards in your life and be without fear, if you do rightfully and hold your heads up or looking forwards, in order to make progress whilst you leave the past behind you and direct yourselves according to what you can do that is good and unfolding or evolutive, and renewing or progressive.
Change made by repudiating your own inner and demolished authority. Chapter 23 lines 176.
In the entire process, you must also look at and consider and bring forth a revolution of the consciousness, its thoughts as well as their feelings, and the thereout resulting psyche structure which may no longer be dependent on an external authority. However, this process involves great difficulties because what is important in the revolutionizing of the consciousness, thoughts, feelings in the psyche, that is to say the entire mental block, is repudiating your own inner and demolished authority, in which are anchored all your unimportant perceptions, cognitions, cognizances, your pseudo-knowledge, your practical experiences and the living of those experiences, as well as all your views, ideas and ideals. Truly, during your lifetime, you had things, happenings and experiences that have taught you something, but you have raised up all that which you have learned to a new authority in you, by which you are ruled, and which has just as great a destructive effect in you as an authority which is already thousands of years old.
Change must be by you and your inner nature, not the inner nature and ways of another person. Chapter 23 lines 146 to 153.
This means, if you do such a thing, that you set up the authority of one of your fellow human beings in yourselves, through which enormous conflicts are brought forth between yourselves and the external authority, as a result of which you believe that you are obliged to do this or that which is told and dictated to you, although you are incapable of actually doing it, because you cannot exchange your inner nature with that of one of your fellow human beings, but must be yourselves, and free in yourselves in every wise. Therefore, two inner natures cannot be existent in you either. You human beings of earth, you are individual natures who have your own thoughts and feelings, and well as your own, and therefore individual intentions and inclinations, hardships and needs as well as wishes, which can in no kind and wise be integrated in an external method or an external system which you believe you must follow. In all respects, an external authority stands in opposition to your own person and dignity. Therefore, the recognition of an external authority in yourselves is a contradiction to your own inner freedom, and cannot be tolerated under any circumstances. If you tolerate it nevertheless, then you are no longer yourselves, but rather you lead an existence of doubtfulness and therefore a life between the external method, that is to say, the external system, that is to say, an external ideology, and the effective reality of your true life. If you allow to let yourselves in for an attempt in such a wise that brings your own inner nature into consonance with the external authority, that is to say, the external ideology. Then you demolish your own self-consciousness and suppress your entirely own individuality. The actual truth of yourself is not anchored in the external authority, that is to say, ideology, but solely and alone in you yourselves, and indeed in that which you effectively are. Therefore, you shall consider that, if you fathom yourselves, you do not direct yourselves according to others, not according to an external authority, that is to say, not according to an external ideology, but only according to yourselves, and according to what you truthfully are and in all honesty want to be, and also strive to be. However, if you do not follow this guidance, then you will remain during the time of your life as human beings who live from the authority of others and are subserviently dependent on them in debasing submissiveness. If you wish to change yourselves, human beings of earth, and if in doing so you demand that you shall be told how you shall do this, then it may very well appear upright that you really want to do it, but that does not correspond to the truth, because truthfully you are being unhonest and do not want it, since you are calling for an external authority which is supposed to help you to achieve a new inner regulation of your inner nature. Therefore you are hoping to attain a new individuality through it, and through its method, that is to say, its system. But this is truly not possible, because only you yourselves can change yourselves fundamentally through your own motivation, initiative, and power. Therefore, you must also go your own way.
Change must go down to the roots of your inner nature, existence and consciousness. Chapter 23, lines 158.
In order to achieve this, however, you must change yourselves down to the roots of your inner nature and existence, as well as in your consciousness, which you must direct in its function into the right lines of right thoughts, out of which right and good feelings arise accordingly, through which you not only form your own psyche, but also influence your inner nature towards a new individuality in a good wise.
Change must start now, or all will remain the same as in the past. Chapter 20, lines 13 to 14.
Consider that each new day and the entire time to come or future will not bring any fewer terrible things, and calamities with it for all people of your kind or humankind than all the days at the time before you are past. Because truly you are not better than your forefathers and foremothers or ancestors' forebears, who brought terrible things and calamity down upon your worlds and all people of your kind or humankind. Therefore, in order for everything to change or alter to the better, you must start in the moment or now with yourselves and turn the terrible things and the calamity away from yourselves. Otherwise, everything will stay as it was in all the time before you or in the past. Therefore, see to it, but differently from your forefathers and foremothers or ancestors' forebears in the times before you or past, that you see or become aware of the terrible things and the calamity, and do not overlook anything, so that you may recognize the evil in it and strive for all goodness which is waiting to be found by you.